Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Glenwood Football Show featuring Coach Jason Gibson. I am your host, Ronald Frazier. We're going to talk about the first game this year. Actually, the Glenwood Gators decided to add that 11th game to get ready for the playoffs and have a serious opponent in a team that made the championship of last year, Monroe Academy. It was a loss, 29-14, but there were some good things in that game too, Coach, and I think we had talked about that earlier, about that first half where at halftime it was 6-0 with 2 minutes to go in the first half. So
yeah, I mean it started out well for us. They drive the field, we stop them on a fourth down play. So we get the ball, they're in cover zero, and which means there's no safety. And we throw a post route to Cameron. He's got the guy beat, and we underthrow the pass, and the guy tips it up. And I thought that play to me would have set the stage for the game, I think. And we didn't make the play. They made it because obviously Cameron has a big X on his back because he's committed to Pitt. And so when we started out the game with a post route to Cameron, it should have been a touchdown. He had him beat, but they make the play. That gives them life, lets them believe. There's nothing worse than letting a guy in a fight, letting him believe he can win. And we did, and he made a great play. And then, they went down and scored, but it was pretty much 6-0 the entire first half. Going back and forth. And then even in the second quarter, we missed a huge go route. Cameron was down the sidelines again. And he kind of made a little bit of a drop, and we underthrew it again a little bit more. And from a statistical standpoint, not jumping ahead, I mean, Bryce was 9 of 21 for 97 yards. If he completes those two passes, he's 11 of 21 for 200 and 2 touchdowns, and he's player of the game. And this is a whole other story. We're not having this conversation, but, ifs and buts. So it was a good first half. I thought that we played really good on defense. We were out there a lot. We had a lot of missed tackles. We had better players. I don't think there's a person that was at the game, that watched the game, that's not going to look at it and say, they're going to be better players. But they had a better team that night. They played better as a team, better as a unit. We're not there yet. So we're not even close to being a cohesive unit to where we need to be. But in the first half, just putting guys on the field, playing a week earlier than we're normally used to. Usually this would be our first game to give us those extra practices. I've already seen a huge difference just from Friday night just to tonight, to tonight's or today's practice, from just those extra 3 days. So, but going into halftime, I thought we had a good shot. I mean, it was 14-0.
Mm-hmm. And they scored with only 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, and the guy made a great play. I mean, we were draped on him. It was a fade route in the corner. He 1 foot in the corner of the end zone. He made a really good play, and we were all over it. And they're up 14-0, but I thought, hey, we'll get the ball, come out, score, be out 14-6. So that was the way I thought about it. I wasn't too freaked out, and I thought we had a lot of kids in the first half that showed us, and obviously Navy Harris, Scott Anderson. I mean, them kids were hitting. There was a play where they hit their number 4 where that kid had a concussion, and nobody pulled him out of the game. Because they're not going to pull kids out of the game for concussions. They just pull kids out of the games for knee pads not being too low.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later, too. That's a little bit of a discussion. But anyway, and that's what happened. It was 14-0. You get the ball, and there's a big turnover.
Oh, yeah. When you play a good team like Monroe, you think about, of course we'll talk about the penalties, but 175 yards of penalties. You have 2 drop touchdown passes, and you turn the ball over twice. Pretty hard to win.
Yeah, this is true, and of course that's something that you wish to work on too.
Right.
And let's face it, Griffin McKenzie, they have the twins, Griffin and Dalton McKenzie, and Griffin McKenzie is a potential all-state performer.
Oh yeah, those 2 kids make that. You take those kids off that team, they're 500. And he's good. Quarterback's good. You got to give him credit. I mean, they're well coached. Very well coached for what they have. But those kids make everything happen. And it was a good measuring stick because now I think, I always say this, you're never as good as you think you are and you're never as bad as you think you are. Sometimes you win a game and you pat yourself on the back and you go home and you don't make the corrections that you really need to make. And so we watched that game of course, and as a staff, and it really exposed a lot of holes, not just in the game, but in operations, in our scheme, in our staff. It exposed a lot of things that we hadn't had a chance to really work on yet. And it really was probably more beneficial for us at the end of the day to lose that game than it would have been to win.
Well, and again, though, I want to mention to our fans out there that last year there was a considerable difference. It was 21 points better than it was last year because it was 48-17, and this year it's 29-14.
Well, like I said, you know, the thing that made the difference, the biggest difference I saw was last year when they broke into space, they were gone. 80-yard touchdowns, trick plays, 60-yard touchdowns. That didn't happen. They earned every cent. They earned every yard they got, every point they had. And when they got to the edge, we called them because that's what we talked. We talked about upgrading the speed of our defense. And they're not playing at their max potential yet. We're learning because it's a new scheme. You know, probably, what? I'm just thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're talking about 7 new starters on defense.
A lot of new faces.
It's a lot of new faces. And like I told the players were really discouraged. And I told them, I'm not worried. If I'm not worried, you don't need to be worried. When I start to worry, then we got problems. So for now, we'll be okay.
And let's mention, at least in the fourth quarter, and I know that you did get 2 touchdowns and you felt like it wasn't their front line, but still there were a couple of players that did a good job. One of those is John Burnett. I think he goes by JB. And he ran for quite a few yards and caught 4 passes for 81 yards.
JB's a threat. You know, he's a threat at tailback. He's a bigger threat at the H-back. He just, you know, out of the backfield, he's got some of the best hands on the team, and JB did really well. And I know they had some second-string guys in, but you still, you know, you keep playing the game. We had a great onside kick at the end of the game that we could have got. If we have gotten that, maybe we score again. It's 29-21. You never know. But it was a good way to finish strong for John. Just a great effort.
He averaged 10 yards a carry, 7 carries for 73 yards, and scored a touchdown. So I think that's one thing that you mentioned last week, that in high school at this level, you have to be able to run the football. And that's a key.
That was an issue. We got 5 offensive linemen that haven't played before. The entire offensive line is new. The quarterback is new. The tailback is new. So, but they're really good players. And I've seen such a huge improvement. But, you know, with all those guys out there, we couldn't run the ball. They put all 11 players inside of 10 yards, and they dared us to throw the ball over the top of their head, which we should have been able to do. We couldn't do it. The continuity's not there yet, but it's getting there.
Right, and anytime the offensive clicks, that offensive line is a key because you have to open the holes and you have to protect that quarterback. So I know that's one thing that you'll be working on this week for your opponent Friday. Now we do need to discuss, and let's go ahead and discuss that now, penalties, because penalties played, unfortunately, a key part of that game. And
I mean, there was a lot. I don't argue, because I've been doing this for a while, I don't argue, you know, holdings and judgment calls, because I've never seen an official pick up a flag and say, oh, you were right, I was wrong. That's never going to happen. Ever. But that's not it. But it was just the tick-tacky. I mean, I think there was probably 4 or 5 offsides penalties where it wasn't that we jumped off sides. Monroe broke the huddle. They're coming to the line of scrimmage. They couldn't even have been set for a second. We might have had a guy with his hand down past the line of scrimmage. They don't even allow them to set back. I mean, they still had players on offense setting up, and I mean, they literally just broke the huddle and they're offsides. And I'm thinking, they haven't even snapped the ball. We haven't even jumped. We haven't done anything. They called 4 or 5 of those. They called a targeting on the running. I haven't figured this one out yet. The running back was running down the field. He's the ball carrier with the ball, and our guy hits him, and they call targeting. I don't know the rule on that one. Maybe they need to educate me, but I've never seen a targeting on the ball carrier. That one kind of boggled me. And I thought there was a bunch of holding penalties. When you rush for 253 yards like Monroe did, there's holdings in there. And for it to be double the penalties. The good thing about the penalties is, and we talked about this as a staff, we didn't have any personal fouls, unsportsmanlike conducts, late hits, stupid, undisciplined, unteam penalties. We didn't have any false starts either. Sorry, I had one false start, and he twitched, which is fine. So the penalties were tick-tacky, like, I tell you what, they threw a flat route to Kaleem Bonds. He jumps up and catches the kid's in his face. Kaleem turns around to get the kid off. They called offensive pass interference, hands to the face. I've never seen that call. It's high school football. I was just, and we paid for 7 officials. Why we paid for 7? I guess we paid to have more officials there to throw more flags. It was ridiculous. And I tried to let the officials know that the people are there to watch the kids play, not them. And it's the opening game of the season. And the mistakes that were made, the mistakes that were not made, I thought was important. You would think for an opening game on both teams, Monroe did a great job of it, and I thought we did too. There was not false starts. There was not delay of games. Those are first game, opening game of the season penalties that most teams have because it's new. You're trying to get coordinated. I thought both teams did a really good job of that. It was just pass interferences and hands to the face and defensive holding and just crazy. I mean, they spent more time worrying about kids' knee pads and shoulder pads instead of just fixing it.
That's unfortunate too, but there is one thing, of course, anytime that you have a contact sport, you're going to have injuries, and I understand that you have a significant injury that you can discuss, and if there are any other
Gage Williams is our senior. He's a senior. He's a captain for us. He's a great player. He's our middle linebacker. He's the heart of that defense with Chad Dykes, and he tears his ACL off on the first drive. I mean, all that work all summer, all that work he put in last year, and it's over. And what do you tell him? What do you tell him? So I mean, he's still our team. He's still our team captain, and it's tough for him. It's tough for the team, but you got to move on. And hopefully, we're going to let Mac English step up, and Mac's a senior. Mac's a big kid. Mac's a big, strong kid. Along with Scotty Anderson, they're just going to have to make things happen. And hopefully, Gage can lead from the sideline and lead from a mentor kind of standpoint and kind of help us solidify the inside linebacker.
Any other injuries that happened that are?
We had some knick-knack stuff. Everybody had injuries and banged up. I think that first game, I think we spent a lot of time this year in training camp not banging because I didn't want to get hurt. And it worked.
Good.
But on the flip side, now you got guys that aren't used to contact, and now they're getting banged up. So now they got to learn to play through that kind of feeling or sensation of being bruised and having tweaked elbows and knees and ankles and things that you have to go through.
Yeah, and that's part of the conditioning process of playing an entire season.
You learn. I mean, one year you try one thing, and then one year you try another. I was at a clinic and talked with a coach. They only have 17 players on their team in Louisiana. He says they practice helmets and jerseys the entire season. They only have contact on game nights because they can't afford to get anybody hurt. I think one year they made the playoffs, one year they didn't. So you got to figure out what kind of team you have. Do you bang every day to condition their bodies and minds for the hitting? But then you have to take a risk of losing players and so on and so on. So it's a fine line that you got to kind of go through.
Right. Now you have your the first game at home. The home opener against Calvary Christian, who played you a tough game last year.
Yes, they did.
That you came through and won at their place. So now they're coming. They won their opener and have and unfortunately for Glenwood, you have another set of twins to face. One at quarterback, just like Monroe,
right?
With Cason Andrews and his brother Bryce, who is a receiver, and they also had a 100-yard rusher. A young fella named McLeod, and I believe that'll be something that you'll need to look at. Chad McNeil. Sorry. Chad McNeil had over 100 yards rushing for him. So that means strong defense needs to be there. So.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah, those two twins are good. They're not the McKenzie twins from Monroe. I mean, but they're good. They're real good. You got to respect that, and you know, it's going to be. Again, I think I've spent this week. Our focus for this game is what do we got to do to fix us. I could sit there and watch Calvary film, and we can scheme against it, and they're going to run this and they're going to run that, and that's all great. I get that, but if we can't do what we do, what does it matter? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're in a 4-4 or a 3-4 or 4-3 or 5-2 or 3-3 stack, or doesn't matter if we can't block down or we can't pull or whatever we do from a running game standpoint, it's irrelevant. So I spent most of the week focusing on doing what we do, playing fast, playing physical. I didn't think we played fast enough versus Monroe. I think we were too much thinking going on. And I still think we put a pretty good defensive performance. So, you know, looking at Calvary, what we have to do is, you know, do what we do and take care of our business, and then we can scheme as we go. I mean, obviously we're playing for the game. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're running scout and we're preparing for them. But and you got to not let the receiver beat you. If you're going to beat me with something else, do it. But I'm not going to let the receiver have 133 yards of receiving. And that's just, you know, it's just good football.
Well, that's what you want to do. And I know at the scrimmage that I attended, and before the first game, you had a full house. And of course, I don't think we mentioned last week, and we should, about the wonderful improvements to Sammy Howard Field.
Wow, what a place! And you've been out there, of course, and you've seen it. But the parents and the support staff at that school is be hard pressed to find another place that has it any better than that. It starts with the administration. It starts from the headmaster, Frankie Mitchum, through Julie Humphreys, the assistant athletic director, and all the way down to Tim Fanning, the athletic director, and it just filters all the way down to all the sports. And the football is trying to get caught up to the baseball and softball and everything else. And we're doing it. And new fence out there, new scoreboard. Scoreboard's been all dressed up. The cheerleading box. I mean, all the things you can imagine. The press box, you know, Gage Williams' parents, I went up there and painted that press box, and I redid everything up there. And it's a great facility. We had a Pee-wee, well, the Pee-wees won this week. So they played on Tuesday. They won, and the JVs played, and the JVs won, and they did a good job. And it was a packed house. It was a packed house for those games on a Tuesday night, and I was impressed. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen, not only because it's a home game Friday night, but because you're playing Calvary, which is across the street, and they're going to bring their great fan base.
Exactly.
They have a really good fan base. And I have some friends over there that are fans that will be coming to the game as well. That'll be sitting on the other side, unfortunately, but I'll still be friends with you after the game.
I mean, that's good. And the Knights are a playoff team. They've been playoffs the last 2 years, as is Glenwood. So it is a meeting between two playoff teams. So both teams will have a good idea. This is what we can do, and this is what we're going to battle.
It's going to be. I'm excited to play at home. I'm excited to make a home crowd difference. But we have to focus on really taking our team to the next level. I pushed them a little harder this week than usual. Because they needed it, and we needed to be able to tear down some walls and start building and we kind of call it the Gator way for what we do, and we're getting there. We're getting there. So, and it's not going to happen Friday night. Now, I expect to go out there and play hard, and I expect them to win. You expect to win every game, but I expect us to be better than we were last week.
Oh, I see.
And that's our goal. You know, and I say it with my other job too, and you don't have to win the first game, you just got to win the last one. And it holds true here too. Holds here true as well.
Well, I think one of the things is Glenwood's offense has shown under you are very proactive. I've seen many high schools that run old school wing tee and that sort of thing. And the Glenwood offense, for one thing, does have a varied type of offense. It's not just running up the middle, but it's and you do run off tackle and up the center, but you also do a good job of running different offensive pass plays too and spreading the field.
Well, the problem with that is it takes time to get it done. I mean, you're talking about 18 practices is all we had. That's not something you put together in 18 practices. It'll probably, from a passing standpoint, to be able to do the things that I really want to do, it's going to be week 6, week 7. It happened last year too. All of a sudden, I think we played. It really started clicking against Fort Dale, not Fort Dale. I'm sorry, Pike. We're down at Pike 28-6 in the fourth quarter, and now it's 35-28. We rolled off 21 points in a quarter, and we had the ball with a chance to win the game. And it just clicked. So I think it's going to be the same thing this year. We got really good quarterbacks. Obviously, we got great receivers, so it's a matter of time.
Right. Well, and that's a good thing. And I know that I didn't mention it, and I should have, that Austin Downey did come in the second half of the game against Monroeville. And again, as he did in the scrimmage, he had some good plays.
That's 2 games in a row. I mean, I keep pushing for, Bryce Valero, and I know Bryce has all the tools, but Austin comes in and, does well and makes good throws, makes good reads. Austin's a big-time pitcher in baseball, so he's a competitor. He knows how to win, and that's good to have, and he's pushing it, and it's great to have those types of players all across the board.
I would think competition like that, and having like John Burnett and then Kayleen Bonds, right, essentially at the same position, that helps because they're both, want to do well, so they push one another to be better.
It's human nature if you have nobody pushing you from the back to kind of slack off. So I'm excited for all of them.
Okay, good deal. Anything else you wanted to mention about Calvary? Because we know that they're going to be out there. It's going to be a tough, tight, close game.
They're going to run the wing T, which is a little different than what they did last year. That means you've got the 2 Andrews twins, and they're going to be up, under the center and running the ball, which is probably what they do better. And that's always a tough offense to stop, just because you can't simulate it in practice. It's hard. It's easy to hold up scout cards with receivers and say, you run this route, let's simulate it. It's hard to simulate the wing team in practice because we don't run it. So all of a sudden you're asking scout team players to run an offense that takes time to perfect. That's the most difficult part. So a lot of film watching. I think we need to play a little bit more emotion against Calvary. Of course, it's you can call it a rivalry game. It's an in-town rivalry, which is good. So it'll be exciting.
Oh, I would think. And this is only the second time, because last year was the first time Glenwood ever had played Calvary, which is a relatively new school, but still, first time playing. So this could be the makings of a real opportunity to have a cross-town rival, I guess.
Well, it's good for both schools, even from a money standpoint, because you're going to bring a good crowd. You want a good gate. It supports both schools. So, we went to there last year and brought a bunch of fans, and that supports their school, which is great. They got a good school over there, and this year we'll have it in Glenwood and vice versa, and then we'll have a good gate, and that'll help out our school and our finances. And those are things you got to look at, unfortunately. But it's good. It's just a good atmosphere for both sides of the river.
Well, that's good. Coach, I think you've got a good idea of what's going to happen Friday night. It's going to be an exciting game, I'm sure. It was last year,
yes,
with a great 4th down stop, and that y'all had to have a first down to clinch the win. And now that young man Cash Boatner made
Kansas.
that big run and went to, and he is at Kansas.
He's at Kansas right now at training camp for Kansas Jayhawks.
So that was a big play, and that was important that your defense, came through there at the end. So it was certainly a close, tight ball game. And
I'll remember that game probably the rest of my life, just because of the situation, and it started everything, because you're a new coach, new program, playing against Calvary. We come in. If we had lost that game, it could have changed things, but we didn't. We figured out a way to win, and that's what the team we have now has to do. The team we have now may have better athletes, but they don't have the team atmosphere of I've got your back no matter what yet. We're working on it. We'll get there. So.
That's good. Coach, I appreciate it. Again, this has been the Glenwood Football Show with special Coach Jason Gibson, and I'm your host, Ronald Frazier. We thank you for watching CTV Beam for this wonderful show, and we plan to be back next week with another 30 minutes about Glenwood football.